Game changers, friends. Welcome back. Listen, it is awesome to be back with you. I'm kind of getting the hang of these solo episodes. I'm loving doing them. They're super fun, and the feedback and the ideas and the topics and all that's been terrific. So hit me up with anything that is on your mind. These are for you. They are for you, and they're fun to do and share. And so hit me up at hello@mollyfletcher.com and just keep them coming. I love them. So thank you. Also, if you get a hot second, if you can subscribe, rate, or review this podcast, man, is that a help for me and for us. And you get my marketing team off my booty. So help me out. And it helps other people find us. And it helps us, serve them and support them. So that would be super, super awesome if you could do that. All right. So here's the thing. I want to dig into a topic that I feel I'm hearing a lot of people talk about. We live in a world where things are coming at all of you pretty quickly, and we get one life. Newsflash. So we got to make it count. So here's what I want to talk a little bit about today, but I want to start with a question. Have you ever found yourself in a meeting, on a call, at a coffee, at a lunch, whatever it might be, and you're like, what am I doing here? Like, why am I on this Zoom call? Like, what am I doing here? And you're super annoyed, or like in anticipation of that moment as you're heading to that coffee, lunch, meeting, whatever it might be, and you're like, why am I doing this? And you're not ready for the meeting at 4 or 5 or the next day that really matters. And you're like, dang. And so then maybe you find yourself at 10 at night with your laptop on your lap in bed or up in your office grinding while your kids are asleep. But you got that coffee in with that, or you had that call that maybe you didn't really need to be on. And so what breaks my heart is that when I share sort of something like that, maybe from stage or with leaders around with teams that we work with, I hear, oh yeah. Like when I'm like, hey, has anybody ever found themselves in this moment? I hear, everybody's like, oh my God, they're laughing. They're like, yeah, totally, been there. So here's the thing. Whether you're a leader, whether you're on a team, whether you're a part of a team, whether you're an individual contributor, whether you are leading your household in whatever form or fashion, whether you're in college or you just graduated, if you are human, here's what I know. You want to do your best for the moments and the people who matter most to you. I know that you want to do that. And here's the problem. If we have low energy or we don't have focus for the people in the moments that matter most to us, we compromise the relationship. We compromise maybe the outcome. And what also happens is that we show up then for maybe the moments that do matter most, the relationships that do matter most, and we're less prepared than we want to be. We have less energy, less focus. We're more distracted than we want to be. And so we compromise the outcome. And here's the thing. That, for some people, happens every day throughout the day. For some people, it happens maybe once a week. Some people, it happens every couple months. Some people go through their life like that. And that breaks my heart. And whether it is something that happens to you often, once in a while, or rarely, I would probably bet that you find yourself potentially in those moments where you feel like you're going through the motions. And then sadly and regrettably, you find yourself in the moments that do matter, compromised. And so I love stories, and so I want to share a story with you. I will always remember this moment and several moments like this. When I was a sports agent, everybody that I worked with, they focused on ensuring they had the kind of energy to perform at their very best in the games and the moments that really mattered most. And that was the lens. But then when I got sort of out of the sports space and in the more traditional business world, what was candidly totally fascinating to me is that business people operate purely and primarily often through the lens of their calendars. That's how the world and business operates. And so inevitably what happens is things come in, people accept these meetings, they populate on their calendars, and then they show up at these meetings and maybe it isn't something that they need to be at. And then the result, as I spoke about, is we compromise potentially the bigger moments. And so the truth is, I lived in this little sort of world where everybody was totally focused on ensuring they had the kind of kind of energy, physically, mentally, emotionally, to perform at their best. And then in business, I found it to be a different lens. And for some, a more reactive lens. And for some, a lens that causes compromise. Compromise in little moments, but also sometimes compromise in big moments and big outcomes that can leave a lasting and potentially not optimal outcome. So, as I said, I love stories. So check this out. I'm sitting in my office at the end of the year, and this happened typically in December, and I would have these meetings with our golfers. And PGA Tour players, and of course now there's the Live Tour. At the time, there was just the PGA Tour, but they can select what tournaments they play in general. And so, and of course, it depends at some level on the athlete's level and their historical performances in tournaments. But this particular day, I just remember it so distinctly. I was sitting in my office with one of our golfers, Matt Kuchar, who is actually still out on tour. And I remember sitting with Matt, and we were looking out at the following season. And with endorsement deals and various things, often an athlete might have to play in a required number of tour events. And yeah, usually I want to recall it being 28 to 32-ish tournaments. And of course it varies by athlete and all that kind of stuff. But here's the thing. I remember sitting there, and Matt and I were looking at the following season. And we were sort of considering what tournaments he wanted to play in and how many weeks he could go back to back before he needed a week off, if you will. And what tournaments did he play well in? What golf courses laddered up to sort of fit his game? Where had he top 10 historically and top 10 the tournament where we know that we play well? Where and how do we operate the optimal cadence of tournaments on and off? Were there majors that we were either in or qualifying for? All of these things went into crafting a schedule to ensure that he positioned himself to perform at his very best in the tournaments that mattered most. And the level of intentionality and structure and focus around ensuring that was optimized for an ideal outcome was very, very important, of course, but it was also candidly not unique, right? At some level. This is how most tour players and LPGA players operate. This is how most great athletes operate. And now that's a professional golfer. And so you might be thinking, Molly, what in the world does this have to do with me? Right? I'm on a team. I'm on a sales team. I'm a pastor at a church. I'm an educator. I'm a doctor. I'm a nurse. Pick. I'm a stay-at-home parent. Whatever it might be. What does this have to do with me? Well, what it has to do with you and with us as business people is that our worlds are a little bit different, and we operate at some level through a little bit of a different lens. And what I have seen over time is, sadly, often a lack of intentionality around the way in which someone is operating their schedule, and in turn it's compromising the moments and the people and the relationships that matter most. And so here's what I want to challenge you to do, in part because you know what I want more than anything is for you listening at some point when I ask that question again. Do you ever find yourself showing up for a moment or a meeting or a conversation or a lunch or a coffee and think, what am I doing here? Why am I here? I hope that I can ask that question and you say, no, that really doesn't happen to me very much at all. I am fiercely focused on ensuring I manage my energy effectively so that I show up for the moments that really matter. Now, here's the other thing. I get it. Like, life isn't a bunch of, rose petals and lollipops, right? Like, this doesn't mean that we don't have to do things in life that we don't necessarily. So you might be thinking, like, what what does a tour player planning his schedule have to do with me? I'm a sales rep. I'm an educator. I'm a minister. I'm a stay-at-home parent. What does this have to do with me? Well, what it has to do with you and with me and with all of us is that what I know, as I said earlier, is you want to show up with the kind of energy and focus to and with the people in your life who matter most. And in order to do that, we have to create a tremendous level of intentionality and clarity. And the result of that is we find ourselves with the kind of energy and focus for the people in the moments that matter most. And that is what I want so deeply for more people in the world. And so how do you do that? Let's dig into that a little bit. Here's what I want you to do. Number one, it starts with clarity. It starts with clarity. I want you to consider what you and how you think, how you feel, what you do when you are at your best. And I want you to think about it through the lens of physical, mental, emotional, relational, and spiritual. Who and how do you show up at your best in those 5 areas of your life, of your energy, if you will? And then what I want you to think about is the various roles you play in your life. So, for me, it's I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a sister, I'm a daughter, I'm a leader, I'm a podcast host, I'm a neighbor, I'm a parishioner at a church, I'm a part of a community. So think about all the roles in your life that matter and are significant in your life. And then, again, think about how do you show up as the best version of yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, relationally, and spiritually. And create clarity around that. Create a tremendous amount of clarity about who and how you show up in the various roles in your life. Now, you might think I'm a little bit crazy, but I literally created a spreadsheet with this on it, with all the roles, the 5 energy sources, if you will, and then the way that I show up physically, mentally, emotionally, relationally, spiritually as a wife, at the best version of myself. How do I do that as a mother in all of those categories, as a sister, as a daughter, etc., as a leader? How do I show up in that way? And then that becomes a bit of the North Star, right? That's how you want to show up in your life in these areas that really matter. And to whom matters. And then number 2, what I want you to do is consider how you can proactively manage your calendar. Because like I said earlier, we as people in the more traditional business world, we operate through the lens in general of our calendars. And so what I want you to do is consider how you can be remarkably intentional and proactive with your calendar. So let me give you an example. When my daughters were, now they're 20, 20, and 21, but when they were in high school and middle school and all of that, I would take all of the big events that were going to happen throughout the year for them, whether it be at school or in sports, birthdays, just all of that. And what I would do is I would go into my schedule all the way out for often 12 months, and I would note those in my calendar so that I could be really careful and intentional about protecting those moments. Because I wanted to be the mom that showed up with the cupcakes on their birthday when they were in 5th grade. I wanted to do that. That felt important to me. And so I would put all those kinds of moments in my schedule so that I could be remarkably intentional about protecting that time. Now, here's the thing. I when my girls were young, I worked for someone else. We all have people in our lives that can, at some level, create tension around our ability to execute against this. And here's my push on that, because I've talked to people about this, and sometimes I get, well, Molly, I protect things on my calendar and people just schedule over it. I protect things on my calendar and then I look up and I've got 2 meetings and I've already protected that time. So here's what I would encourage you to do. Have some difficult conversations. Manage up, manage down. And you might say, Molly, you're crazy. You don't understand my organization. You don't understand my boss. Well, here's what I do understand. You have more control of your energy than I think often we as people want to admit and own. And if you don't decide where your energy goes, the world and everyone else will decide for you. Now, listen to that's big, right? Like, if you don't decide where your energy goes, the world and everybody else will decide for you. I would argue it is one of your, if not your most precious resource. Do not give that away. So it might mean you have to have difficult conversations. And what I can promise you is that the people on my team would tell you this. I believe as leaders, it's incredibly important to create an environment that's safe and people can give you feedback. And just the other day, one of my team members who I love dearly has been on our team for 6 years, and she scheduled a call that she was supposed to be on, and then she sent a note and said, oh my gosh, when I scheduled this, I didn't realize it, but my son had a swim meet added to his schedule, and I can't be on the call. And because she's consistently a high performer, and I love her deeply, and all of those kinds of things, and I think it's incredibly important that I support her being at those moments when we all do. That was great. That was fine. And we supported that. Now, what I can tell you is there's been moments where maybe as leaders, we ask things of our team members, and our team members have to have the courage, and we as leaders have to create the space for people to manage up and say, look, I mean, I have a board meeting tonight for a nonprofit that I'm a part of, and I can get one of these two things over to you before I head out for that, but I can't get them both. So which one do you want? We've got to be able to have those conversations, folks, because if we don't, we are going to live with resentment and regret. So I would just challenge you, intentionally and proactively manage your calendar and put in the things that really, really matter most to you. When you consider the roles you play, when you consider the way that you show up as the best version of yourself, you know that you want to show up for the moments that you have identified and that you want to prioritize. You want to show up for those moments with the kind of energy that you need. You don't want to roll into the volleyball game for your son or daughter 30 minutes late and totally exhausted and fatigued. That's not optimal, right? So number one, we want to create the clarity and consider it through our 5 primary sources of energy and then all of the roles we play in our lives. Number 2, we want to proactively manage our calendar by inserting the things that we have gotten clear on really matter most relative to the roles that we play in our life. We want to have the courage to have difficult conversations. And then the other thing I would encourage you to do, and this was something that I would encourage you to pull back and consider, what are the micro breaks that you can take throughout your day? Because here's what we know is that if we proactively manage our calendar, as we start to anticipate the days forthcoming, maybe we see a 30-minute gap. Can we grab that time as a micro break? Can we grab a 15-minute gap as a bit of a micro break where we can step outside, where we can stretch? Take a piece of paper and write 5, 15, and 30. And then underneath it, write breaks, micro breaks for you that give you energy. What's something you can do in 5 minutes, 15 minutes, and 30 minutes? Because here's the thing. We can't wait for spring break in March, right? Like, we can't wait for Christmas break, Thanksgiving. We can't wait for that to reset our energy clocks, as I say. So do me a favor. Just start look at tomorrow. Look at tomorrow and consider, are there things on your calendar that aren't a priority that in fact could be compromising the way you show up for maybe another moment that really matters? Is that something that you can delegate, shorten, minimize, and or push out? Maybe it's tomorrow, maybe it's next week, whatever it might be. Number 2, proactively manage your calendar. And what I mean by this is, what I would encourage you to do is pull back and say, what are the various roles in your life, the people and the relationships and roles that you play in your life that really matter most? How can you begin to anticipate the things in their lives and in your life that really matter, and go out into your calendar and protect those things? You know, when my daughters were really young, I would take their school calendars. I would take even like whether it was their birthdays or holidays or special days when they were in school, or their game schedules when they were playing sports. And I would put those all in my calendar, and that allowed me to build around the things that really matter most. And look, I'm not saying that we always nail this perfectly, but what I am suggesting is do your best to go out and identify the calendar, the things that really matter. So number 2, I want you to proactively manage your calendar. And what I mean by this is consider the various roles that you play in your life, your most important relationships inside of the roles that you play in your life. And then what I would ask you to consider is to look at the schedules. So let me give you an example. When my daughters were really young and they were playing various sports, and I would go out into my schedule and I would work hard to protect the things that were happening in their lives that I wanted to ensure that I was at. And I would load those into my calendar, and then I would attempt to proactively color code those things in such a way that I could communicate the colors of those things to people on my team so as to help them understand those are really important to me. So I need to be checked with before anything gets scheduled over those things. And look, I know some of you are listening, and I've had people say this, well, Molly, like, that's great, but here's the thing, I do that already. And what happens is people schedule right over them. Sometimes I've protected my daughter's volleyball game, and all of a sudden I've got 2 or 3 meetings that have been scheduled over that. So look, those are the moments that we have to step into difficult conversations. Those are the moments that I think we've got to have the courage to manage up or manage down or manage around. And it's remarkably important, because otherwise we find ourselves compromising the people in the moments that really matter most. Is this easy? No. Are you going to nail it every time? No. I can promise you I certainly haven't and didn't. But what I believe is remarkably important is the level of proactivity and intentionality sets us up best for success. So first and foremost, we've got to get really, really clear on the roles we play in our life and how we show up as the best version of ourselves in those roles. And then number 2, we want to proactively go out and manage our calendars, considering those roles and dropping those into our calendars proactively. Now, that might mean, as I said, that we've got to manage around and up and down. And I would encourage you to do that. And I think it's a remarkably important thing to do. Earlier this week, a woman that has worked for me for a long time, she's an incredible woman, and there was an additional swim meet scheduled for her son, and it overlapped a call that she had previously scheduled that was an important call, and she sent a note and said, "Oh my gosh, I didn't realize, but this meet was scheduled or added on to his schedule, and I really want to be there. Can we record the meeting and I can jump right on anything that I've missed?" And I know that that's important to her, and so I want to support her in that. And she feels comfortable and safe to communicate that to me, and to not just skip the meet and show up for the call and then potentially feel frustrated and regret what she missed. So I would encourage you to consider this in your own life. And maybe just start by going out for a week. Look out a week in your schedule and consider, how can I anticipate maybe things that I can minimize or delegate? How can I potentially shift things that shouldn't be on my calendar? How can I potentially navigate things that are forthcoming that are going to compromise what I've previously gotten clear on really matter? Now, this can be clunky, it can be hard, it can take a few minutes, you're going to have some trial and error, and so please be gentle on yourself as you navigate it. And there are so many moments that I can remember. I remember a moment when my daughter was going to be in a 5th grade play, and one of my big league guys got called up to the big leagues, and he was going to have his first big league outing. Now, when a guy gets called up to the big leagues and it's his first big league outing ever, those are a moment that an agent wants to be there. But I had so consistently poured into this player over the years, and he was a terrific and is a terrific person. And so I remember thinking, as absurd as this might sound, is he going to fire me if I don't go to this big league outing and go in 3 more days or 4 more days when he's pitching again, because I had promised my daughter that I was going to be at her plate. And I remember thinking, no, because I've consistently poured into the relationship. So no, he's not gonna. And he didn't. And I was there 4 days later. Now, I'm not suggesting that that's always the circumstance, by the way. But what I am suggesting is that we want to consider these moments with more intentionality. Because I think we live in a world where things are coming at people so quickly that oftentimes we just accept, and then we show up at the Zoom call, the lunch, the meeting, the conversation, and we don't have the kind of focus and energy, be it personally or professionally, for the moment, the conversation, the pitch, the sales call, the meeting that really matters. And man, that breaks my heart, because it compromises our relationships. It compromises the outcome. So I want to leave you with this. Remember that saying no is saying yes to something else that you previously got clear on matters more. And number 2, don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. I can't tell you the number of times that I've walked over to my husband and said, man, that this keynote request just came in, but that would mean the following. I just don't know if I should say yes or not, and what should we do? Or a myriad of different situations. Or the number of times when I was an agent, or the number of times that you know what, Chad, let's kind of cut that. I'm going to say this. And remember, don't be afraid to ask for help. Maybe it's your partner. Maybe it's the person that you work with or for. Maybe it's your assistant. Maybe it's somebody that helps you with your schedule, helping them potentially get out ahead of some of these moments and help protect you based on what you want to focus on and prioritize. Ask them for help. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And then, be gentle on yourself. You're going to nail it sometimes, and man, sometimes you're not. And I can tell you that from my own experience. What I want more than anything for you is for you to have the kind of focus and energy for the moments and the people in your life that matter most. And here's what's incredibly important to remember. If you don't decide where your energy goes, the world and everybody else will decide for you. Don't give that away. Don't give that away. Own that. All right. Well, thank you for joining me for this solo podcast episode. Hit me up again, hello@mollyfletcher.com. And if you get a hot second, don't be afraid to do me a favor. Subscribe, rate, or review the show. Helps other people find it. And it's a big help to getting my marketing people off my booty. I am signing off. Game changers. All stars. Talk to you soon.